Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. So good to have you aboard with us today. My name is Seth Crossman. I'm joined here again with Ben Brayshaw and Dan Mickelin. How are you gentlemen doing?
I'm doing well, Seth. I'm doing well. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, it's a nice warm winter day today.
No.
Wow.
Sun with snow. Yeah, we got them both going on right now. But
that was bordering on the cautiously optimistic, which I think we're going to dip into a little bit today on some of these articles we got covered, Dan.
That's good. That's a good outlook to have for this year, I think.
Yeah, no, I would say so as well. But as I look outside, I'm like, nope. I've got some typical Portland rain happening right now. But you know what? That's what we love about this part of the world is we love it wet over here. We look down our noses or our hoods at people that drag umbrellas out in this stuff. Do you guys do the same? Do you guys kind of laugh at the people that are umbrella people?
I am not an umbrella guy.
I'm not an umbrella guy. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Because, you know, you put on your coat, you get out there and you make it happen.
Yeah, I love being out in the weather. I don't care what it is. I enjoy it. I don't like being cold inside, so I'm always, wrapped up. I get the heater cranking inside, but when I'm outside, I don't care what's going on. I like it.
Yeah, I know you like it warm, Dan.
I can feel the heater coming creeping over the wall.
Dan's I walk into Dan's office with his heater going in there, and I'm like, it's not that cold. But I enjoy snowshoeing. I love that on a heavy snow day and getting out there a couple hours with the kids or something like that. So that's good times.
No polar plunge, no ice baths, no cold showers for you, Dan?
Well, I actually have a hot water tank issue going on at home, so the cold showers is a little that's that hurt a little bit, Seth. That hurt. But.
Did you know that, Seth?
I had no idea. I love it. I love it. I was just getting curious.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
Wow.
But we're working our way through it.
Well, today we got quite a show for you. We are doing part 2 of our 2023 tax updates. We went over a lot last week. We talked about a lot of different things. We're going to cover some more items that are going to be updates and things to look out for as you move into 2023 and how to strategize about that. But you guys have any thoughts about that?
Well, there are a lot of changes. So, I mean, I think, kind of the key takeaway for listeners should just be the awareness, right? Just be aware of what changes have happened. And if you need to make adjustments on, withholdings, how you receive income, what your contributions look like for the upcoming year, just get ahead of that and, put yourself in the best position to end this year, hopefully in a better position than where 2022 ended, but fully leveraging all the opportunities that exist inside the tax code, because there are some opportunities.
I think there's a lot of people looking for a better outcome than 2022 is how. What do you think, Seth?
Well, I think this falls right in line with our previous show, which was, being the best you could be in 2023. It's part of it. It's part of the planning. It's part of the preparation and just adding, an initial awareness and having, some conversations around this is wonderful. I love the opportunity to sit down and do the planning piece, which is taking a look at the last couple of years of your taxes, understanding what the landscape was then and the moves you were making and how this next year is going to look for you, what some of those projections could be, and how do we pull the pieces together. There's a lot of the components here that, add a significant value to being a successful investor, and we talk about that all the time here, the three-dimensional perspective around your investing. We're financial planners. We're going to take a look at the brokerage and the fee-based planning as well as insurance, and we're going to pull all those pieces together, which are really our wheelhouse. But it doesn't get done well without this piece. And that's what we're going to be. We're going to be better in 2023. And I cannot wait to get there with you guys. Before we go into the rest of the show, it is time for Money in the News.
And up first, we got an article here from Investopedia, taking into account one of our favorite guys, No home court edge for Musk in the funding secured trial. And this goes back to a tweet that Elon Musk had sent back in 2018. Well, it was a tweet, but it was actually not Twitter related. This is the one where, he set out in a public format that he had privately secured the funding to take Tesla private again. For industry insiders such as ourselves, we would understand representing a public company that you just can't make claims like that in a wide open public format. As he did, could certainly excuse him maybe not being aware of that. But the fact of the matter is that his little tweet, his comment there, had a really significant effect on people. Tesla shares rose 11% the day that he made the tweet, only to drop 20% in the next 10 days when it became clear that he was just blowing smoke with this whole offer. And that cost shareholders $14 billion.
It's funny. My wife hates Musk. I don't know where you guys stand. I mean, my son and I are always like, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he just does the stupidest, dumbest, smartest things all at once. So, yeah, he made a mistake, and it is what it is. I do appreciate that Britta Pedersen, I guess, is the author here. I really do appreciate that she makes the point that even though it dropped 20%, that even today's trading value, it dropped 65% in the last year, is still trading higher than the day he made that tweet and the rise of that 11%. So I do appreciate that, because it's not like he hasn't had return for investors, though he's lost a lot this last year for investors. But that is, I do appreciate the perspective, and bringing that awareness to an article, because I think when we read a lot of articles, people don't have that kind of bigger perspective of like carrying out. Like if you just read this article at face value and said, oh, he made this tweet, it went up 11% and dropped 20, and people lost $14 billion, and that's all you heard, you'd be like, But there are people who make investments based on that, right? And then did sell when it dropped 20%, watching out for it. I do appreciate the bigger perspective here that she has brought, all of the distance of the stock into play, both the height of it, where it's at today, that it's higher than that time period, and that it dropped 65%, because that is a huge hit. Like that is not I don't find that a lot in articles.
It'd be hard to really kind of pinpoint who actually lost money as an investor, who could say, hey, listen, I sold based on this, and this is the impact that I had. But kind of the bigger issue is it's really a rules violation. I mean, it just really does come down to that. In fact, the judge has already ruled that the tweet was false and reckless, and will inform jurors of that at the outset of the trial. So, I mean, he's starting this trial with the judge telling the jury that this was false and reckless and had an economic impact on lots of people, and he's got to dig his way out of that hole.
I mean, $14 billion is not that much for this guy. So, I mean, when you think about it, like he could have settled this. I mean, he spent what, $40 billion. He sold $40 billion worth of stock last year. He's still second richest man in the world. $14 billion is not going to bankrupt the guy. Not that anyone wants to lose $14 billion. I get that, but he could have settled this thing. I mean, here's $10 billion. Let's all walk away. But they're not doing that. And what's interesting is he wants to fight this. He really does. And when you think about it, they're talking about bringing witnesses from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, the Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle, like all these different people that are going to be named as witnesses that potentially tied to
that might have been the private funding he thought he had. But, I think probably more at risk for him than this $14 billion is his ability to lead a public company going forward. Well, I mean, that might be the issue.
Well, that was the other thing they took away. They said he had to step down as chairman of the board. That's what FINRA's fines were for another tweet that he'd done, and
right.
All that other stuff. So they've already put sanctions in place. I mean, just because you're the second richest man in the world, the richest man in the world, you just got to. I mean, these rules, they're just going to fine you and fine you and fine you, and they're going to take power away from you. Nibbling, and now he owns Twitter, and that's even a bigger problem. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and the stock fell 65%, and I wonder if they're going to ding him for that. I think it's interesting how he was, trying to move the trial away from San Francisco, where they're pulling the jury from. And, I don't blame him, because I could imagine all those jurors just shaking their fists. You ruined my Twitter.
Yeah,
you ruined my Twitter.
Or all the bots will be shaking their fist
as they drive into Teslas. But it's. I mean, it's a mess.
I like that point, Dan.
Yeah. I wonder what would have happened if, not to bring back the previous person, but if they would have had some sanctions on Trump's accounts and some monitoring on on his accounts like they did to Elon after this whole debacle.
I just think some people need a Twitter filter is what it is. Like before you tweet it, or like, you know,
hey,
there's
an
like
app
a go-between. Yeah, you know.
The problem
you hit
is,
send, review that. Have someone review that.
I probably should have that once in a while.
All right. You guys, we could probably, you know what? I feel like it's been a while since we've had Elon on the show with us. So we took a little extra time with you today, buddy. We appreciate you showing up for us at Money on Tap. Elon, we love you. No matter what Kim says, you're welcome here any day. So moving on, we've got Davos, Switzerland, where the World Economic Forum got together, and you know what? The economists around that are a little downbeat about the prospects of 2023. However, the executives are becoming cautiously optimistic. There's that term again, Dan. And we're not talking about the weather of New Hampshire or Oregon today, but we are talking about, you know, what's in store for our economy as they have let China loose on the world again.
Yeah, will there be a recession, right? So the article is no recession after all, ? Business leaders are more hopeful as China reopens. This is from Julia Horowitz at CNN. And really what the article boils down to is, you know, we've been hearing about this threat of global recession for quite some time. And, you know, there's expectations, you know, here in the U.S. and in Europe that there's at least a mild recession on its way. But with China reopening and the end of their zero COVID policy, whatever they call it, so really, really strict measures. I mean, we've all seen in the news these like mobile jails where they're just rounding people up and throwing them in. You know, with all that coming to an end and their economy, you know, potentially, or we expect to get back up on its feet, you know, there's going to be just that whole global supply issue. The expectation is that's going to break down and manufacturing will be let loose again, and you know, people will be hot to spend.
There's a lot of dollars locked up in China, folks, and there's no doubt as they ease these zero COVID policies, they're coming out ready to spend. I mean, it's remember 2021. Now, I mean, it was interesting to travel because there was some of those policies on the airplanes where you have to wear your mask except for when you're eating. So I constantly had some like pretzel or peanut or something going into my mouth, so I didn't have to wear my mask. Anyways, you just remember when things were easing up and everybody was like running out the door. We're going to talk about some of the economics around what happened at that time as well. But there was a lot of money coming to the table because people had been, were frankly tired of playing video games. So it's going to be really interesting to see how, second largest economy in the world plays out when they just, have a ton of capital waiting to spend, and how much of that really gets into the rest of the world and what does that shake out to be. We're going to find out, but we do expect to see, is pretty general. It's looking like the China's economy is going to roll out some more inline numbers with what they've typically done as far as the growth of their economy. And as much as, we may not care for their policies, it looks like it's going to be a healthier balance sheet worldwide.
Seth, as you mentioned that, in reading this article, there's a couple things that are running through my head because I think what we don't understand necessarily is, the lack of production in fossil fuels that we've, limited on so many different levels, and the reopening, realize that, COVID hit during the Trump years, that was when we were, pipelines were open, we were energy independent, all those things, were moving forward in that pace. COVID hits, then all the restrictions on pipelines, drilling in the federal, all of the federal lands, all that stuff, right? So now we're no longer energy independent, and China's reopening. I don't think we really have quantified the demand inside. I mean, I was just actually talking to, somebody the other day about all the, people in D.C., Congress-ish people buying fossil fuels, buying oil and gas companies, putting money in those spaces, because I think there is literally a stranglehold around it. Like if you have a pipeline and you were to go from a 2-foot pipe to a 1/2-foot pipe, that strangling on that distribution is you still got to go through all of that. So we have strangled our distribution. And now we've strangled Russia's distribution, and so we have all these global aspects to the oil demand and the natural gas demand, and China's just reopening. Like, what's that going to mean? I mean, how much is that going to potentially put, the barrel of oil? I mean, I think we could be looking at a barrel of oil close to 200. I really think that's a possibility. I mean, I know J.P. Morgan, I think it was J.P. Morgan a few years ago said that could be a real possibility. And I think we talked about it on our show, actually, in an article. And I think we're forgetting the second largest economy in the world is reopening.
That was Ukraine as well.
Yes, exactly. So you're having all these different things. Like, a lot of people are getting out of energy. I'm not sure, personally not sure, if getting out of energy right now is the number one right move. Because here you got Buffett. I don't know how much he owns of Occidental Petroleum, but I mean, he applied to
up to 50%.
Up to 50%. I mean, these big stakeholders are, these people are taking some major stakes in energy, and that should be a cautionary question to everyone. What's really going on? I don't think we understand the stranglehold. Like, you might be paying $3 at the gallon, per gallon at the gas station right now, but it could be really soaring on us here shortly.
Well, if I own 50% of Marathon, I can tell you guys, what you'd be getting for Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you guys, there is more for us here, Money in the News. We've got some leveling off of some prices as this soaring inflation has taken over the news waves. Can you believe it that among the price drops out there, bacon, cars, cell phones have experienced and beef have experienced some of the largest price drops. Well, I don't know since when, but they're significant. I mean, up to 22% on smartphones this last year, 14% on televisions, 8% on used cars. So this is a very interesting article, and one that's kind of a breath of fresh air among all the inflation articles that we come across every day. And so thank you very much, Greg Iacurri.
Well, I think the only real value I found out of this article, and it was good. It was interesting to read that things have declined, but obviously things had increased over, all this time.
The year before. Yeah.
The year before so heavily. But I think the one comparison, smartphones being the biggest drop, you're still paying $800 for a smartphone, and it's increased in its technology. I think that's the point made. So I can't remember the phrase of what that's called. There's a technicality phrase to
hedonistic.
Yeah,
or hedonic.
Hedonic, yeah, hedonic. So probably not the first one. So so that was interesting. But the television, some of the technology stuff, the demand had just dropped, and people had been buying so much. So I think that was kind of interesting. But again, it's still more expensive than it was.
Yeah, I thought, what was also interesting is some of the food pricing, right? So they identified a couple of categories of food that have come down in price, even though, every time we go to the grocery store, and we talk about this probably in almost every show, it just seems like prices are astronomically higher. Well, they are, in fact, astronomically higher. But there's a couple categories, particularly around the beef world, that, have actually seen prices drop. And, part of that's credited to just a massive drought in a lot of these cattle raising areas where there just wasn't enough water to sustain the herd, so they've had to do a lot of culling, and so there's a lot of what were to-be cows for other purposes have been sent off to the butcher, and now there's kind of a glut of beef out there. So for those of you with better cholesterol than me, it's a good opportunity.
Well, it depends on whether they're jacking in with the mRNA shots that you're reading about now. So whatever.
Pfizer patty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to caution people when they're buying some of the aged beef out there. Just, check the date on that one. Folks, you're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're talking about tax changes in 2023 this year. I guess it is 2023, so that all lines up really well for all of us here today. We're going to have some fun. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
For a number of our listeners, they have a lot of questions, and you might be one of them. Today, we're just offering what we call Zoominars, webinars over Zoom meeting rooms where we have top experts, Social Security, estate planning, and financial planning experts for you to speak with, do a private consultation that way today. We're also having webinar-based Zoominars where we're going to have multiple groups where you can be part of that and enjoy that as well. Give us a call at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com to schedule your Zoominar.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking today about the tax changes. What's happening in the tax code for 2023? And this is a part two because there was way too much information to cover in one show. However, we're going to do a brief recap of what we kind of covered in last show. So you get the added bonus. It's like 2 shows in one for you today, right out of the get-go. For starters, this year, we have got tax brackets, right? Tax brackets are going to remain the same, but the income level for each tax bracket is increased 7.1%. The standard deduction is going up. Retirement plan contributions are going up to $22,500 for a 401k or $30,000 if you're over 50, as well as the IRA contributions are going up. Health savings accounts contributions are going up $200 per individual. And the earned income tax credit is going up to $7,430 from $6,935. We did cover as well alternative minimum tax, and that's raising. The estate tax is raising, and, well, the gift exclusion is raising. Was there anything that we kind of had baked into those that we covered, Ben, Dan, that you felt was really important to bring forward and highlight today for our clients and listeners?
Well, I think some of the points, as you're making these quickly, I would just go back to our show last week and listen to it, because there's a lot of detail to all these. Because just because the numbers are going up doesn't mean it's a higher tax for you. It's actually potentially a higher exclusion, as we're detailing, like alternative minimum tax. It went from $118,000 before they test and you start looking at paying AMT to $126,500. Now, we're not CPAs and we don't know how some of these things are going to in line with your, tax hit, but we do this stuff all the time and we see these things. And that's why when we sit down with our clients, we ask to see a tax return, because we want to see how we can help mitigate and reduce taxes. And if your financial planner is not asking you for that and they're not sitting with you in that capacity, I would tell you you're leaving money on the table somewhere. Because you just can't guess at this stuff. It doesn't work that way. So we're not CPAs, but we work through this space a lot, and we work with your CPAs, and we help you ask the right questions on trying to get the right answers on that stuff. So and the gift exclusion is probably one of the best opportunities to build legacy planning and to utilize it in a lot of different ways, not just gifting away, but using it as a gift to monetize that. We talked about that into the insurance world, to buy life insurance. It's a great way to not pay any taxes, gift the money away, throw it into some life insurance, and then really make that thing balloon into something as a much bigger gift and create a legacy that could carry on for generations and generations to come, as we face probably potentially the highest future tax increase our nation will see in the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that taxes are going up in our future, or at least, basic math would tell us that's a likely outcome. But, in the changes that have been, passed for 23, chances are there's a good opportunity for you to realize some tax savings and understanding, potentially what to do with that, whether it's, using it to invest or increasing your contributions through payroll, whatever opportunity best suits your specific personal financial picture. Just be aware of these levels, be open to that conversation and go into the year kind of knowing where you're at and, what's possible for you.
I think the best, kind of idea of what we do and how we help people through this stuff is we're talking about these numbers, why they're so important that we would take 2 shows to actually go through this is, we basically massage people's finances through their tax return because there are ways to manipulate that will really drive more value, more money that you can keep, as Dan says. It's how much you get to keep, and that's really what's important and where we focus that. And if you don't know these numbers and you don't know these barriers and these lines and how to, create a portfolio and an investment strategy around these lines, then you're really costing yourself unnecessary financial harm. And that's really where people just don't realize that those opportunities are available. That's why you hire a financial planner, is to really help maximize your dollars. But the question is the person helping you maximize it the most? Are they looking at all the different lengths of how you can really take advantage of that? And I think that's the piece that a lot of people are missing.
I think it's important to note one thing too. I mean, we talked about working with your CPA. Just always keep in mind that we kind of come at it from a different perspective. A CPA is going to be aware of tax code, of course, but their goal each and every time you sit with them is to minimize your taxes paid. I mean, that's the hat they wear. I mean, that's how they look at every case. Whereas,
but when do you see your CPA? Yeah. April 14th.
In tax season, yeah, when he's got 5 minutes to talk to you and he's just cranking out returns. Our perspective, obviously we want to pay as little tax as possible, but it's not on a year-by-year basis necessarily. That's an overall estate preservation mindset. At the end of the game, how much did you get to keep? And there may be opportunities and periods of time along the way where pushing out some income through the tax bracket actually makes sense longer term.
Yeah, and I think we're going to look at some of that as we move forward with, application and simple application that you can use, as we close out this show today, that people can walk away with some real applied value here.
Social Security taxes going up. This one is a CPI adjustment that will basically cost you more. So the 6.2% that most people that are employees pay for their funded Social Security, and then employers pay the same. And if you're self-employed, you pay a full 12.4%. So the maximum amount of your earnings subject to Social Security tax will increase from 147 to 162. Little bit of a bump there.
Yeah, if your if your income covers that range and you're taking home 160 plus, that's certainly going to have an effect. You're going to feel that one. I mean, that's not a small percentage over those extra $13,200 you made. So, expect to pay more if you're in that income range for sure.
See, a lot of people, Social Security tax is one of those things that a lot of people, especially business owners, don't really understand. And from a strategy standpoint, one of the things that I talk to business owners, they'll have a spouse on the payroll, right? So they might be making $100,000 and they're paying their spouse $75,000 or $80,000. And so let's just use the illustration that the husband's making $100,000 and the wife is making $80,000, and that's $180,000. Well, they would pay Social Security tax on the whole $180,000 because they're both liable for the full 12.4 on the $100,000 and the $80,000 individually. But if the husband just made $180,000 and didn't pay the wife anything and made her work for free like most husbands do because it's a strategy, he would only pay Social Security tax on the $160,000 that he made. The other $20,000 would have no Social Security tax. And so a lot of people don't realize that inside that conversation because, you've just saved yourself, I don't know, like
12% on $20,000.
Yeah, So you're looking at a decent amount of money, and so I was actually doing the 6.4, and then I was like, no, it's the 12. So that's where my head was going. But yes, but that's something that you have to think about because if you're, if a lot of people, they're self-employed people, their husband and wife are both making $150,000. It happens all the time, and there's probably a ton of people listening to us like that, and like, oh my goodness, I'm paying Social Security tax on a full $300,000, and we're just both under that number. And it's like we don't need to be paying that much Social Security tax. And, how much you pay and what you do, that's your decision. And, but it is important to make sure you fill your 40 quarters. So it's 10 years worth of employment. So you want to make sure that you're getting all your 40 quarters in for each other. And obviously how much you make during those quarters is relevant. So it doesn't mean that, payroll income can shift one way or another in different years, and maybe your wife is working a lot harder, which she probably is, than you are. And so, she should get paid more in certain years. So, there's ways to look at the system in a way that you can really take advantage of what you're eligible for, but not overpay either. And this is an example of understanding the roadmap and where you're traveling. Are you going to take the highway and pay taxes for both of you, or are you going to hop in the same car and take, the side roads and the routes and everything else and avoid the taxes? So that Social Security tax is a big hit that a lot of self-employed people don't understand. And I've seen that time and time again, where the husband and wife just split the income because of that. And then when you sit down and say, it's irrelevant of who's taking the income in by name. For some people, it's like, well, let's just split it, because they don't understand the tax code. But that amount that they're going to tax you on goes from 147 to 160. After 160, you're not paying those taxes anymore. And that's what you need to understand on that piece.
Yeah, it's just the good tip there, I think, is, a lot of people will set this up when they start their company and, just truck along for the next 30 years without ever re-looking at it, and this is one of those things that checking in with a financial advisor periodically just to make sure you're doing the most efficient thing kind of makes sense. Get those 40 quarters, you got to get that done. But then after that, think about how to best turn that dial.
Well, and this is the reason people ask sometimes when we ask for tax returns, I get some people like, why do you need a tax return? You do taxes too? And we do have somebody who does taxes for us here in the office. But, from that standpoint, if we didn't look at your tax return, we wouldn't know that you were splitting, $200,000 or $300,000 of revenue between a husband and wife equally and overpaying on your Social Security tax. And to build a strategy around that. I mean, that alone, the savings of meeting with somebody who's going to work with you and be your planner is really valuable and important. You'd be shocked how much money that we either save in taxes for people, help maximize an outcome and income, and various other ways that bring value that's
just looking
not
at
quantifiable.
Looking at that example, it's the difference between funding into a broken Social Security system or making an IRA contribution for yourself. In something that's under your control, that's entirely yours. It's either or.
Or a car payment.
Something, yeah. It's real money. It's real money.
It's real money, and that's, I think, the point that needs to be made.
Veterans benefits are going to be going up as well. So we've seen an increase in the Social Security benefits. Well, veterans are going to get an increase of around 8.7% with inflation. For a veteran receiving $1,500 monthly, that's going to equate to about $130 each month. So we do see a lot of the inflation or the CPI kind of giving us an understanding of what the inflation looks like, playing out not only in the government and our taxes, but we also see it a lot of the time when we're taking a look at the rents that correspond. So there's the real estate that will have that correspondence to it, as well as you will see, gas prices. We've already talked a lot about that. And then we'll see raises across the board. A lot of employers will give their raises out kind of dependent on the CPI. So same thing here, veterans benefits going up. And that's a good thing to see, so that, the experience that we have with our veterans and our retirees, or that they're able to continue to try to keep up or keep pace with some of the inflation.
Yeah, I'm super appreciative of this. I'm very appreciative of all our veterans, and, I couldn't thank any of you guys enough for all you've done for us and our freedom. So that's out to you, and I wish that number was even higher than that, to be honest with you. There's a sacrifice that's bigger than us inside that, and I appreciate that. When it comes to our veterans and all the different pieces that need to be fulfilled, there's a lot of planning around veterans. And I found that, veterans have all the veteran benefits of, just medical and so forth are great and wonderful, but they don't carry to the spouse. And so there's a specific type of planning that we do with a lot of military in a lot of different ways, specifically veterans, to try to highlight and take care of, your wife or your husband who's not a veteran, and really make sure that they're cared for inside either becoming ill or sick or dependent prior to you or after you, and how that looks. And that's a hard thing to address, and it requires a specific level of both knowledge and sensitivity, and something that we're very familiar with. So that's there's a deeper piece here that is really what I want to communicate on that.
And another change for 2023 is the adoption credit. The maximum credit allowed for adoptions and expenses is set to rise from $15,950. From $14,890 up to $15,950. So a nice little credit there for those of you gracious and willing enough to adopt.
Yeah, it's not a deduction; it's a credit. So it literally comes off. If you owe $15,000 in taxes or $16,000 in taxes, it's going to wash that dollar for dollar out, which is phenomenal. It's so much. I mean, a deduction's one thing; a credit is it's gold.
I mean, and along with veterans, one of the communities that we should be taken care of in this world and in this, our federal tax code is the people willing to adopt.
And there's a lot of people in the Christian world that listening to us today. I know on WDER and a number of other stations we're on. So there's just a heartfelt desire to bring children and care for them that are in need. And I mean, the $16,000 credit's great, but it's definitely not going to pay for having a child in the home. But it is definitely a help.
Yeah, no, that's a calling for people who choose to do that, and it's it's not something you make with finances in mind. It's a much bigger commitment than that.
Well, there are going to be some changes in the retirement withdrawal rule. If you're not familiar with the RMD, which stands for Required Minimum Distribution, this is a rule that has been in place around IRAs and retirement accounts for I haven't even taken a look at the history of that, but it's been around before I was an advisor, which is a long time now. And what that has stated is that at age, it was 70 and a half and then 72, and this year it's going to be 73. They keep kind of moving that back, and then it's going to go to age 75 in 2033. So what that has done is said that you can keep your money in your IRA or your retirement account without having to take it out until that time. And what happens is if there's a consequence, there's a 50% tax if you do not take that money out of your IRA. So one of the things around those required minimum distributions is it's a calculation based on your age and how much money you have in those accounts that requires you to take that money out. And most of the time, people have really enjoyed the benefit of kind of postponing that. And, it's kind of it's the opposite. I guess the opposite of that layaway. I don't want to quite take that money yet. I'm just going to set it aside and let it do its thing. Why? Because as you take money out of your IRA, it counts towards income, right? That is traditional income in your taxes. It comes through, and that's that. So we're going to get a break for some people, but there's a little bit of a cautionary tale here as well.
Yeah, under the new law, if you don't take your RMD, the penalty is dropping from 50%. I mean, it's a 50% penalty plus you pay income tax. So you're looking at, if you're in the 32% bracket, you're looking at 82% of that money gone to the government. They're dropping that penalty down to 25%. And if you miss it and make a mistake and you take it out fast, which I would assume means like January 5th or 10th, I forgot it and something happened or a problem, it's only a 10% penalty. So significantly better than the 50% it was, but it's still a penalty.
Yes, still want to be mindful. That 10% is no joke.
Yeah, and I think when the RMD piece, I think we should spend some time here. There's so much to the conversation around RMDs. Like the idea of pushing it off, I mean, I don't think the government ever does much in the way of when it comes to what is potentially deferring their revenue. I don't ever think it's anything but self-serving to the overall demands. So conspiracy theory in or out or however you want to think, the longer they delay your distribution of your taxes, of your IRA money, which is going to create taxes. As you made the point, Dan, at one point, like, hey, listen, the life expectancy is a shorter time period. As they raise this age, you got to take more money out over a shorter period of time. And so what ends up happening is you're taking out more income, potentially pushing yourself up the income ladder, therefore potentially hitting a higher tax bracket. The other thing is I think taxes are going to be higher in 3, 5, and 10 years. So as they continue to push this down the road, they're potentially pushing people in who don't take their RMDs out until those ages to a later date when potentially tax rates will most likely be higher, therefore generating even more income on money that's grown.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a benefit because a lot of people think of the RMD as a nuisance, but there's a couple things working against you if you just presume that. Number one is the potentially inflated tax brackets, right? So we know down the road we're likely to pay higher taxes on your income. But as well, your entitlements that you get, whether it's Medicaid or Social Security, those are all affected by your income as well. So if you're deferring it now to save money at the 22% bracket, to potentially take it later at a higher bracket and have your other benefits received from the government be taxed at a larger rate, that's overall probably a decision that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Which goes back to our point that we all made earlier in the idea that there's a point in time when paying taxes at some point might save you taxes later on or save you costs later on, may generate more legacy wealth, might make you more financially viable, in your goals and so forth. We've talked to a lot of people. So if you're a person looking at this as an opportunity to defer your taxes, you're also probably a person who doesn't need the RMDs, which is a common thing. A lot of people, it's a nuisance, it's a problem. Why is the government forcing me to take this money out? I don't understand. They want their tax dollars. This is what this is. It forces the money out. So they want to force it out in a time period that might mitigate how much they pay out in Social Security. It mitigates how much they actually, it actually increases the potential amount of money they're taking in from taxes on the IRA. There's a lot of benefits for the government by doing this.
With life expectancy lowering here, they're also kind of compressing the math in terms of the percentage that they require you to take out on an annual basis. So, although they're allowing you to wait until 75, the other end of their calculation here, which is, what percentage do you need to take out based upon life expectancy is compressing. So they're going to put you in a position where you're likely taking out more per year than you would have otherwise, which puts more tax dollars back in the government's pocket.
Yeah, they're getting you at a higher tax rate and pushing out less benefits to you, and so that's a big issue. One thing that I would say that we talk to a lot of people about is, you're 65 or you're 62 and you're retiring early, and I don't need all this money out of my 401k, and I don't want to go into, I'm in the 22% bracket. Well, right after the 22% bracket is 24% bracket. I mean, it's not a big jump. And so to try to potentially say, hey, I'm going to be in this bracket almost indefinitely, like this is my space, this is my place, push it right to the limits. Maybe look at doing a 24% bracket as your distribution level and then push out a portion of your 401k or your IRA or whatever in those early years, because as you dwindle that down and hopefully transition that from that qualified or retirement asset, as we call a qualified asset, to a non-qualified or an after-tax asset, is a real opportunity. And then use those dollars to solve other problems, like the tax rate your kids are going to pay on those IRAs when they inherit those. Because if your child inherits those things and they're not in the RMD phase, they get a beneficial IRA and they've got to take that out over 10 years. And that's a big hit. I mean, the government's forcing them to take it over a shorter period of time so that it pushes their overall tax bracket up instead of drifting it out over their lifetime. So there's lots of reasons why to do that. So we have used that scenario many, many times where we've used that distribution, bought life insurance to pay the taxes on the distribution of the IRA or the potential future tax burden, so the children are a little bit more relieved of that space, and your hard-earned money's not wasted.
Yeah, and other opportunities, potentially in the long-term care world as well, which is an unforeseen, unknowable expense that, 50% of us are going to realize, according to all the statistics. So to be able to use that kind of unwanted, quote-unquote, income that, seems like a nuisance to protect against a significant future liability can make a lot of sense.
Well, take it one step further, because I know you – sorry, go ahead, Seth.
No, go ahead.
So, take that one step further, the idea that, hey, life insurance is one thing, but, when you're buying long-term care, and I know this is what you're talking about, you have life and long-term care all wrapped up in one purchase. Like you can convert it. It's like turning the switch over left, to life, right to long-term care, and whatever event happens, it provides for you. So there's a lot of opportunities to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And maybe you make it a limited pay. You're 62 years old. You're like, I might need my IRA money in 10 years. Pay for your long-term care over 10 years and be done with it.
Yeah, we have a really unique solution here that we use with a lot of people where, and this doesn't pan out for everybody, but, there is an opportunity to transfer IRA money into a life insurance / long-term care policy that if in the end you do ultimately use to cover long-term care expenses, it will come out of that policy tax-free. So, good news, bad news, you will never pay taxes on your IRA, but that means you needed nursing care. So,
But it's still a great way to pay for it, and it's a way that pays for it a lot less expensive than taking the tax burden and the hit.
If you're going to find yourself there, this will be a real savings and a windfall to you. Nobody wishes that for themselves or for anybody, but again, 50% of us do end up there. And if you structured your planning this way, you'll save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I love what you said as far as compressing the how that works with the longer you postpone those distributions, the larger that those accounts can be, as well as the age that defines the amount of distribution that you have to take that year, as well as the taxes that are coming down the pipe and the increases in the taxes that are coming down the pipe. It's a lot like, have you ever tried to hold a beach ball underwater? It's kind of fun for a while. You sit on it and you try to balance, you have fun, but eventually that thing comes flying back out of the pool or the lake, and you got to deal with it, right? Or shaking up a soda can. If you take that analogy and you look at what we're trying to accomplish here is just kind of maybe releasing some of the pressure in some different ways that you just haven't considered, instead of just postponing the inevitability of what is the tax law.
Absolutely. Next up, Dan, you want to take us on to some state tax law changes that I think are really relevant?
Yeah, these apply to a lot of people that fall into our kind of listening audience on the radio. For those of you looking on the podcast, if we don't get to your state here, certainly feel free to reach out by email or give us a call, and we can bring you up to speed if there's any relevant changes happening for you. But in New Hampshire, upcoming to 23, they're going to begin the phase out on income tax on interest and dividends in 2023, bringing the rate down from 5% to 4%, with the goal of bringing it to zero entirely by 2027. So people who are living on interest and dividends, or just have that spin off of their portfolio, additional savings for you there, and that's a big means by which we generate income for retirees here. So that's good news. And then separately for business owners, there's a business profit tax that's also being reduced a little less here. It's going from 7.6 down to 7.5%, which will apply for the calendar year of 2023. So, a couple elements of good news there for New Hampshire residents. And then for folks in Massachusetts, one big change here, unfortunately, going in the other direction. But this applies
No surprise there.
Yeah, right. More taxes there. But this applies only to people making above $1 million. But there's an extra tax there that's they're going to add 4% to the current 5% for anybody earning over $1 million.
So their flat tax went to a non-flat tax.
It is not flat. It is 9%. That's not flat. That's a big bite.
That is not flat whatsoever at all.
No.
It might be Flat-achusetts, it might be Tax-achusetts, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah, if you're making that $1 million a year in Massachusetts, come on up here to New Hampshire.
Yeah, right.
Get some help for you.
And then invest it and get some dividends and interest.
That's right.
Well, there's a lot of changes there. There's a number of states that we went through, and there are more information. If you have we have listeners all over the country. So if you have a specific state you're interested in, you can reach out to us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. We can go through your state and look at the various tax changes that might be relevant. And like we said, if your financial planner is not sitting down with you and working through your taxes, you're really seeing a disservice in trying to understand how to get the most out of your hard-earned work, because every one of us works really hard. And I know that if you're listening today, it's because you care that deeply.
Folks, you're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about tax changes in 2023. We're about to get into some application here for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey folks, Seth Cressman, Brayshaw Financial Group is our company, and we bring to you Money on Tap. I say we, that's Ben and I. We have a lot of fun doing this show. And one of the things that we love about doing Money on Tap is that our goal for you to have access
to the financial planning world. How do we think? What are we doing? What are we talking about? Raising the bar of your financial education. It's so critical. And that's what we're doing here. The other side of this is as well, we're financial planners. If you are looking to work with a financial planner, if you want to have that playbook for you to understand the important things right now and how you're going to get to your goals or how you're going to retire successfully, that's what we're doing as well. If you have $250,000 of investable assets, give us a call. It's free to you, and it is worth your time to pick up that phone and give us a call and discover what complete wealth management looks like. Ben and I are excited about the opportunity to partner with you and give you that financial plan that's going to make the next step so much better understood and get you where you need to go.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about the 2023 tax changes, and we really did a lot in that RMD section, kind of like the application there. And there's several other ways that you can really take this code and start to work with it. That's what we want to make sure that you have on board today.
Yeah, yesterday we talked about last week we talked about the donor advised funds and charitable contributions and kind of winding those up, all your charitable contributions into 1 year, putting them in a donor advised fund and then allowing the donor advised fund to spread out your charitable contributions to your charities over the next preceding years. That would allow you to maximize your standard deductions in the following year. So if you're giving $60,000 away to charities over 3 years, you do 60 1 year right into a donor advised fund. It gives your charity $20,000 each year, and then you're adding everything else up. It allows you to maximize those standard deductions the government gives you for free, and really saves a lot of people taxes. But a lot of people don't know that that's an option. That's one big takeaway here.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. Another thing to do with brackets in mind is look at those Roth conversion opportunities. You know, with the understanding and the expectation that taxes are going up in the future, as we talked about RMDs, there's a great chance here to work within those brackets, pay potentially just 2 percentage points higher in taxes, but settle your taxes forever on portions of your IRA. Get that converted into a Roth.
All right, folks, last but not least, it is the HSA, your triple threat in the tax world. The contribution limit has gone up to $7,750 for your family. Beautiful thing that just comes straight off the top. It's a deduction for your taxes, just like you would in an IRA contribution. You can invest that money and it can grow for you over time, or it's just a pass-through that you can use for medical expenses. And that's the key. It has to be used for medical expenses. But the beautiful thing of this is it can grow tax-free, and the distribution on it is tax-free. That's kind of like a Roth. And we love it because it's also one of these pieces that down the road can be used really powerfully as a planning tool. There's so many expenses going up. We're in an inflationary world. Medical expenses is a big part of inflation that we see all the time. And as you get over the age of 65, you can choose to use that as just ordinary income for yourself. But a lot of the time we see people using that in other ways for the medical expenses. And again, experiencing a tax-free distribution or much of tax-free income for themselves. So beautiful part of that we're opening up more to the contributions and the deductions. And, you know, hopefully there's a lot of growth in that for you over time as well. Folks, you have been listening to tax changes for 2023 here at Money on Tap. We hope that you've been able to gather some information for yourself and start to apply it for 2023 so that you don't hit the floor in 24 and you experience what the benefits of all that we have here. If you have listened to today and are looking for some help on this, give us a call at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We'd love to sit down with you and find out what is the best path forward and make that next step. You listen to Money on Tap. Folks, be successful in your investing. We'll see you next week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.